Mango, you wanna come outside? I'm sorry, buddy. Oh, I like this egg. This egg's nice. Oh, making noise. I'm heavy. When people ask why Pachuca, I never really know how to answer that question. There's so many layers to it, how we got to this decision. Pachuca isn't really, when you think of Mexico, Pachuca isn't the first city you think of. You think of Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, Cancun, Merida. These are the cities that you think of, immediately. Think of moving to Mexico, must be one of these cities. So how we came to this decision to move to Pachuca is an interesting one. So this week on Sitdown Sunday, I want to sit down, meditate a little bit of how we made this choice. And yeah, there's so many reasons why we made this choice, but I hope that this insight helps on how we made this choice, but maybe sparks your curiosity and maybe Pachuca is a place you want to come visit. Okay, so the right place is doesn't exist, a right place like hits every variable possible, is not possible. You can't find that perfect place. So that right off the bat really, relieves a little bit of stress of how we make these choices because we're figuring it out. Lynette and I have only been a year and a half here in Mexico. So choosing where to live is not so easy. We have to choose, what are the most important variables or the most important reasons that a city has to have. And then based on that research, based on the feelings that we have while visiting the city, can we make that choice? So to start off, I feel like I have to give a little bit of backstory of what led us to choose Pachuca. The first situation was we were living in Mexico City and we knew that we wanted to leave Mexico City. And if you want to know why we left Mexico City, my previous why we left talks about a little bit, our past Sit-Down Sunday talks a little bit about why we left Mexico City. So I won't really delve deep into that in this conversation, but if you're interested in why we left Mexico City, please check that video out. We knew we had to leave Mexico City, or we wanted to leave Mexico City. And the reality is that we had a 1-year lease in our contract in Mexico City. So once we had 2 months left into the contract, we felt like, okay, we got to start researching. To not make the story too long, for multiple reasons, our timeline got a little bit crunched down and we felt like we had a month to make this big life, life altering is a bit extreme, but it is changing your life, right? Choosing where to live, restarting again. It was a big decision. So we were running out of time and there's a couple things we did know. We knew that we loved the weather here centrally in Mexico. We love Mexico City's weather, even though there's a couple hot months, maybe 2 out of the year. But the rest of the year, man, the weather is, I would argue, perfect. So we like the idea of staying centrally in Mexico. Also because of, once you get to the coast, there's risks, weather risks, whether it's hurricanes, things like that. So we didn't want to, do that choice. We did visit, before even moving from New York to Mexico, we considered even moving to Puerto Vallarta, which is a city in Jalisco. And it was a city that sounds really nice. It's a sweet spot. If you live there, hey, that's awesome. We just didn't like the weather. We visited, it's a great place to go visit, vacation, beach town, awesome vibes. But we felt long term, the humidity, the heat. It's ironic because I'm from Arizona, but it's different. Humidity, heat versus dry heat is a big, vast difference. So being a desert rat, I just felt
humidity was too much. So we never considered any beach towns, even though it sounds paradisiac. Paradisiac, whatever, paradise. It sounds like a paradise living in a coastal town. It's very beautiful, the beach. It just didn't draw us because of the weather. So for us, a big factor in choosing the city we were going to move to had to do with weather and staying central. So that was one reason why we chose Pachuca, because we're still central. Some people don't like Pachuca. is like the windy city of Mexico. I don't feel like it's extremely windy, but maybe I'm biased and you have to come visit to see for yourself. I don't think it's windy. My mom's from Chicago, and go Cubs, go Bears. My mom's from Chicago, and we visited, and that's the windy city. You know what I'm saying? That is wind. And there's evenings where there is a lot of wind here, but I don't feel like it's extreme or like unbearable. At least that's our opinion. So that wasn't a factor in choosing Pachuca. It didn't worry us, the wind. But for sure, number one that Pachuca did have was great weather. Again, Pachuca isn't a city that's romanticized in the public eye. It's technically the capital of Hidalgo, the state of Hidalgo. So it has everything a big city would need. There's good hospitals, there's a Walmart. It doesn't have everything that Mexico City has, but everything you need is basically here. So Pachuca isn't very romanticized, again, in the public, but it has everything you need. And again, it's not, you don't drive into Pachuca and you're starstruck of the beauty. It's a different type of beauty. It's a desert beauty. And again, growing up in Arizona, Lynette, South California, I feel like we appreciate it maybe more than most. So again, it's not a city that, will just wow you with beauty, but it has beautiful elements to it. So that didn't really affect us, like looking for the perfect place. And an interesting thing, or a point to note, is that sometimes we as humans try to guess where the best place will be for ourselves, and it's just hard to pick, honestly. So you just have to commit. So when we're running out of time, we had some friends that are from Pachuca, and they told us, like, come visit, no pressure. And you've met them in previous videos, Milton and Carla. They invited us just to come over. We had breakfast with them. They're like, drive around the city, get to know it a little bit. So our first impression, it just really felt very neutral when we pulled into Pachuca. It wasn't, again, I mentioned earlier, it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad either. It just felt like, it gives me a small city vibe, even though it's a big city. Like driving like at night, when you see all the lights, it looks massive. Like it is massive. It's in my opinion, it feels very big. Once you zoom out a little bit, but once you're living day to day, it doesn't feel like a big city. It feels like a pueblito, a town, that has everything you need, very family oriented, not touristy. At least that's my opinion. So we like that. We like that feeling because we were running away from a big city, so we wanted peace and quiet, and Pachuca provided that. Another reason why we chose Pachuca is it was a slower rhythm of life. Again, I mentioned it earlier, Mexico City was too fast-paced, and we liked the slower rhythm. The mornings here feel like a slow morning. You can wake up early, drink some coffee, and it feels like the city is waking up with you. There's not a lot of noise, it's quiet, you hear, the birds chirping. It's a very peaceful area, and we love that. Compare that to Mexico City, and it was loud, alive, which again is cool. Again, it's just different taste. And for Len and I, we like the peacefulness of Pachuca. I have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is the cost. The reality is that Pachuca is more affordable compared to Mexico City. So that affordability factor did play a role, trying to find a place to live that we could afford in our budget without pushing our budget. Compared to Mexico City, we were really pushing our budget, living day to day, month to month. But here, finding a place that was safe and had everything we need was easier and more affordable. So that was another reason why we chose Pachuca. Another reason why we chose Pachuca is the proximity to Mexico City. Honestly, we love Mexico City. I can't say that more. We do love Mexico City, and we're only like an hour and a half away with traffic. So we are close enough where if we want to do a day trip, we can, and we can enjoy it and have fun. If we need Mexico City has one of the world's best hospital systems. There's the huge respected private hospitals. So if we need that, we're not far away, even though Pachuca has good hospitals here too. But if we needed it, we're not far. So we could take advantage of the benefits of Mexico City without having to live in Mexico City. We can just drive for a weekend, family are visiting, friends are visiting, and it's a place to go with museums, food. There's so many things to do. We like the proximity to Mexico City. That also involves airport. If we want to travel, Mexico City has, I believe it's 2 large international airports. One of them, which is new, the IFA, is actually really close to us. It's 40 minutes from us. It's technically a Mexico City airport, but it's super close to Pachuca, which is a huge benefit. Having our family in the States, being close to a big airport, a cheaper airport because it's international, it's a large city. I mean, cheaper is relative, but it's cheaper than a small city, right? Because you have to there's direct flights from Mexico City to big cities in the US. So that was another reason that we loved Pachuca. So I acknowledged the reality of the proximity of Mexico City, and that was a huge reason why we chose to live here. It wasn't going to be a difficult move. We were able to find movers to transport all our goods over here, all our little things we have, our furniture that we have. We were able to move from Mexico City to Pachuca quite easily. So again, if you ever visit Pachuca, I do think it's a city to come visit. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me in the comments. But there's some really cool history here in Pachuca if you really look deeply. For example, the origins of football, which we all love. Shout out to the team I support, which is Chelsea. But football was first introduced to Mexico here in Pachuca. Pachuca used to be a mining town, and there's various mountains around Pachuca that were mined, and British people came to mine those areas, and that's how football was introduced to Mexico. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me, but that's what I've heard. That the first influences of football was here in Pachuca, which is a cool little thing. Again, I really feel like to make any place a home, no place is perfect, and it really is an attitude thing and a slowing down thing. I think if you really slow down and see what's important to you, important to me and Lynette, that helped us come to this choice. Because there's things that we miss about Mexico City, and there's probably things that another city might have that Pachuca doesn't. But we don't want to have that Netflix paradox. You probably heard of it, where you're just scrolling and you don't pick anything. We felt that Pachuca hit enough squares, or enough parts in our checklist that we made the choice to move here. We committed, and we've loved it, honestly. We're hoping to stay here long term. Again, we don't know. Life can change, family can change, something can happen that can move us away from here, but we're not regretting the choice to live here. It's beautiful in its own way. It does feel like a small town with big city elements. It's it just really feels homey. I guess that's the best word I can think of, but there's just so many benefits. We're close to Mexico City. It has big city amenities, big stores, big things that we might need. We're close to nature, which is a cool thing. There's Mineral de Chico, which is about half an hour away from us, maybe 40 minutes away from us, which is this national park that you can hike, you can camp. There's another little cute, that's where mining happened, was Mineral de Monte. And that's where pastas were invented. I'll probably do another video about pastas and what that is. But anyways, there's local, we're so central that we're close to things. So if we want to do a weekend trip to Puebla, a weekend trip to Guanajuato, we could. We haven't done it yet since we've been here, but we want to, and that's the plan. So we really feel like Pachuca doesn't spark this wow, you live in Pachuca. It isn't a city that a lot of people can think of as the top 5 places to go live in Mexico. But I feel like for our needs and wants, creatively, slower pace of life, peace, safety, it checks marks all those points. And we're close to, again, big city amenities if we ever need them. For example, recently Lynette had she had damaged her eye. I don't know what part of her eye, but she damaged it. Fun story, random story, part of our Sitdown Sunday. But here's a point of living close to Mexico City. We called a bunch of eye doctors. I called a bunch of eye doctors locally. It was a Sunday, and none of them were open. Everyone was closed on a Sunday. So we're like, okay, Lynette's eye is like being inflamed. It's causing her a lot of pain. What do we do? So we start looking at Mexico City, and we found a doctor that was available in Mexico City. I mean, a lot of doctors that were open and available. So we drove down there. It wasn't like a life-ending situation, right? But that is a benefit of living here, because, you know, it wasn't open there, and we were able to drive to Mexico City and get the things we needed. And her eye is much better now. That was a side quest of a story, but again, that's another benefit of living here. Maybe you could argue in a big city like Guadalajara, Monterrey, that wouldn't happen, but we weren't searching for a big city. We're searching for big city amenities, but a slower pace of life and not so loud and more quiet. It really feels like you can connect with nature more here. There's a lot more mountain biking in these areas, if that's something you're into. I'm trying to get into it. I'm not good at it. I don't have the legs for it, but there's a lot of cool things to do here too, honestly, locally. The soccer stadium is like 30 minutes away. That's another video I want to put out, is going to a soccer match here, Los Tuzos. Anyways, I'm just getting sidetracked here, but there's just a bunch of pros of why we chose to live in Pachuca. So if you've been here thus far, I appreciate you tuning in and sitting down with me on this Sit-Down Sunday. I hope that this provides some insight to a city that maybe you never considered. As always, do your research. I'm not a professional, and I'm not professionals. These are the reasons why we chose to live here. I've mentioned it before. If you're thinking about living in Mexico, maybe you're also like me, like Lynette. We're bicultural. Bicultural, is that the right word? We're Mexican citizens and U.S. citizens, and if you're thinking about moving to Mexico because you're in the same boat, maybe Pachuca can be the city for you, or maybe not. You know, at least come visit. I do think that it's a city worth visiting, especially if you're already visiting Mexico City. You're only an hour and a half away. If you want to try different cuisines, things like that, it is worth coming. There's interesting museums here too. I really think nature-wise, there's a lot of cool nature things to do here. Mexico City has its big parks and things like that, but if you want to just go hiking in the mountains, come down to Pachuca. So please like and subscribe. Thank you again for being here on this journey as I self-reflect on our move to Mexico and the lessons I've learned thus far. I really hope this brings you some sort of value, and if it did, please like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you next week.